Hello again, everyone. I thought it might be useful to look at a statement that was released by the North Korean Foreign Ministry on the 23rd. And I copied it, copied it off from Korean Central News Agency. And I thought I'd read it out for everyone and kind of examine it and see what we can glean from this as to what happened to Otto Warmbier, or Warmbier. I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing his name. So here we go. Pyongyang, June 23rd, KCNA. A spokesman for the DPRK Foreign Ministry Friday released the following statement over the fact the U.S. administration authorities are heating up the anti-DPRK smear campaign by abusing the humanitarian measure taken by the DPRK as an inhuman act concerning the death of Warmbier, an American citizen. So here's where the statement begins. Warmbier is clearly a criminal sentenced to reform through labor. In accordance with the DPRK law on March 16, 2016, for the hostile act he committed against the DPRK on an assignment from an anti-DPRK plot-breeding organization in the U.S. So they believe he was sent by someone. At least that's what they're saying here. Okay? Next paragraph. As was made public to the world during the press conference on February 29, 2016, Warmbier confessed in tears that he had committed hostile act against the DPRK with connivance of the U.S. administration after he received an assignment from the Z Society of the Virginia University of the U.S. controlled by the Friendship United Methodist Church, an anti-DPRK plot-breeding organization of the U.S. and the Central Intelligence Agency. Here, they haven't got it right. I looked at the Z Society, and there may be something going on there. I don't know, but they're mostly a philanthropic organization. They do charitable work. At least that's what they say. There are a lot of secret societies in the University of Virginia. There's 7 or 8 of them. The 7 Society is secret. You don't even get to know who the members are. As far as the Friendship United Methodist Church, if they're talking about the one in Wyoming, Ohio, near Cincinnati, I checked their website, and there's nothing there that would indicate that they're anything else than just an ordinary church. There's nothing about human rights. I mean, that's the dead giveaway. A lot of these churches will have the human rights stuff. There's no human rights. There's no, they don't belong to any of these organizations, nothing to do with Korea or the UN or the World Council of Churches or anything like that. I couldn't find anything political at all. They seem to be a totally non-political church, but that's just checking their website. So I don't know about that. Okay, here we go. Continue. CNN and other U.S. media outlets are still broadcasting the video of Warmbier admitting his crime and apologizing for it at the press conference in Pyongyang. The DPRK-U.S. relations are in the most hostile and belligerent state, and the U.S. is making every frantic effort to disparage the prestige of the dignified DPRK and stifle it while imposing heinous sanctions and pressure unprecedented in history. Although we had no reason at all to show mercy to such a criminal of the enemy state, we provided him with medical treatments and care with all sincerity on humanitarian basis until his return to the U.S., considering that his health got worse. As for the groundless public opinion now circulating in the U.S. that he died of torture and beating during his reform through labor, The American doctors who came to the DPRK for repatriation of Warmbier will have something to say about it. Now this is something that I wasn't aware of. At least I didn't see it in the media, that doctors had actually flown to North Korea when they accepted him, when they took him onto the airplane, and they examined him. So, I thought he just was first examined when he got back to Cincinnati, to the medical center there at the University of Cincinnati. But no, the North Korean says, no, U.S. doctors came to North Korea. Continuing, the doctors from America, they examined Warmbier and exchanged medical observations about him with our doctors. They recognized that his health indicators like pulse, temperature, respiration, and the examination result of the heart and lung were all normal, and that we provided him with medical treatment and brought him back alive, whose heart was nearly stopped. That's actually a key phrase there, because his heart had nearly stopped, but they brought him back to life. And this kind of ties in with my theory, could be wrong, but that the young man, Otto, attempted to take his own life. But they revived him. They resuscitated him. Not sure, like I say, I'm not sure if that's happened, but so far, seems to me what happened. Going on. Now the former officials of the Obama administration publicize as their achievement the release of 10 American citizens granted by the humanitarian measures we had taken. They cannot but acknowledge the fact that we treat the detainees in accordance with international law and standard. This is, again, I think important, because more than anything, North Korea wants to have legitimacy. They don't want to be regarded as an outlaw or a pariah state. And they want to be able to have equal standing with everybody else. This is Kim Il-sung, that's all he talked about. The status of the DPRK, or like they call it, the prestige of the dignified DPRK. So when they say we treat the detainees in accordance with international laws and standards, I believe this. And this is what prevents them from doing silly stuff, like beating people and things. What they do to their own people domestically, internally, is another matter. But, they don't want to have anything that would besmirch or stain their reputation. So they're pretty careful, in my opinion. Going on, the fact that Warmbier died suddenly in less than a week just after his return to the U.S. in his normal state of health indicators is a mystery to us as well. Why did he die? Well, he was in a vegetative state when he got here. His folks may have, who knows. But he did pass away. It reminds us of an incident that Evan Hunsaker, an American citizen who had illegally crossed the border and entered the DPRK on August 24th, 1996. He was the first American that was detained. Of all these 15 in the last 20 years, Hunsaker was the first. Detained in August 24th, 1996, died in less than a month after he returned home in perfect health, accompanied by Bill Richardson, the then U.S. Congressman, on November 7th, the same year, thanks to our humanitarian measures. So Hunsaker was held from August 24th to November 27th. And he died soon after he got home. And North Korea looks at this as a kind of a curious event. Hunsaker died, and so did Otto. The fact is, Hunsaker took his own life. He shot himself with, I believe, his cousin's pistol. So we know what happened to Hunsaker. We don't know what happened to Otto. At that time, the U.S. had totally ignored and not even mentioned a word about his death. Hunziker's death. The point here is he was also an American citizen, was he not? Warmbier is a victim of policy of strategic patience of Obama, who was engrossed in utmost hostility and negation against the DPRK and refused to have dialogue with the DPRK. This is true. Obama said, let's just freeze them out. Maybe they'll, something will happen and we don't have to worry about them anymore. Why the U.S. government, which claims to care about the welfare of its citizens, had not even once made an official request for the release of Warmbier on humanitarian basis during the Obama administration? The answer should be given by the U.S. itself, and this is true. Otto's father said the Obama administration just turned its back on Otto. They didn't once say anything, ask anything about his welfare through diplomatic channels. The Swedish legation in Pyongyang, they take care of American affairs. So if Americans want to talk to North Korea, they do it through the Swedish channel. Nothing. Obama did not even ask once about Otto. And the North Koreans are curious about this. Why didn't you at least ask? Continuing, although Warmbier was a criminal who committed hostile act against the DPRK, we accepted the repeated request of the present U.S. administration, Trump administration, and in consideration of his bad health, sent him back home on humanitarian grounds, according to the adjudication made on June 13, 2017, by the Central Court of the DPRK, or I suppose this would be their Supreme Court. And this Supreme Court said, fine, the Trump administration asked for his release, we'll release him. At this point, I'm sure that the North Koreans just wanted Otto off their hands, because they were worried he was going to die. However, the U.S. totally distorted this truth and dared to clamor about retaliation and pressure on the dignified DPRK, again that phrase, dignified DPRK, while deliberately kicking up the smearing campaign against the DPRK. This is a frontal challenge and political plot against us. And here's a very curious statement. To make it clear, we are the biggest victim of this incident, and there would be no more foolish judgment than to think we do not know how to calculate gains and losses. They regard themselves as the biggest victim. Well, they didn't entice Otto to go to Pyongyang. They didn't, this just happened to them, by an American tourist. So they consider themselves a victim. Okay. The smear campaign against DPRK staged in the U.S. compels us to make firm determination in humanitarianism and benevolence for the enemy, or a taboo, and we should further sharpen the blade of law. Now, this is what they said when Kenneth Bay was released. They released him on humanitarian grounds. He got 15 years for doing something way worse, 100 times worse than what Otto did. But they released Bay because they were afraid he was going to die or get really sick there. So they kicked him out. And Kenneth Bay went back, made a miraculous recovery, and basically thumbed his nose at the North Korea. North Korea was really angry about that. And so they made a statement, something like this: the next time, we're going to really give it to somebody. It crosses the line. And that's what they said here, and let me read that again. The smear campaign against DPRK staged in the U.S. compels us to make firm determination that humanitarianism and benevolence for the enemy are a taboo, and we should further sharpen the blade of law. So they're really going to come down on the next tourist that gets out of line. For whatever it's worth, they might, but And then finally, the U.S. should ponder over the consequences to be entailed from its reckless and rash act. So there you go. So this is something that's interesting. Getting back to the Friendship United Methodist Church, an anti-DPRK plot breeding organization in the U.S. and the Central Intelligence Agency. Somehow they believe the government is behind the Friendship United Methodist Church, and the CIA is involved with them. The reason why they think that is because quite a few Christian organizations have been weaponized by the CIA and by the National Intelligence Service of South Korea. They send in operatives under the guise of being ministers and missionaries, do-gooders, and they're actual agents of South Korean intelligence sponsored by the CIA. So they think that pretty much any church that someone belongs to, so if you go to North Korea and you're a member of a Christian church, that doesn't necessarily disqualify you, but it does raise suspicions, especially if you speak Korean, which obviously Otto didn't. But they think they're kind of paranoid. They think everybody's out to get them, and especially these Christian organizations that the CIA and the NIS has co-opted. So that's our takeaways from that. Kind of interesting. The one other thing is that I haven't been able to determine, but again, going back to the church, apparently the Friendship United Methodist Church, I'm not sure if Warmbier's parents attend that or not, but his mother, from what I read, his mother is Jewish. And at the University of Virginia, Warmbier has apparently expressed his Judaism because he got a birthright trip to Israel, and those are given free to Jewish students. So apparently he's Jewish, and that's how you inherit Judaism from the matriarchal side, because you always know who your mother is. So he became involved in the Jewish thing. The North Koreans didn't know, apparently weren't aware that he was Jewish. He professed to be Jewish. So I don't know whether when Warmbier says, well, he stole the poster to hang in his church or something. He wasn't, being totally honest about, apparently he was a member of a synagogue or a temple, either one. Not sure, I guess could have been a temple because he's not Orthodox. I hope I have that correct. So I don't know. That's an interesting question. But yeah, they didn't know that he professed Judaism. They might have taken a different tact on it, because North Korea and Israel do not get along. They're at loggerheads. So anyway, that's what we have there, and that's probably all I'll have to say for this for a while. I'm going to make a video on the 15 people that have been detained in North Korea over the last 20 years, and look at them each individually and why they were detained, for how long, and how their case was adjudicated, and so on and so forth. So that'll be coming up here in a few days. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.